Hey everyone, it's Raheel. Another Friday, another chance to recap some of the biggest stories of the week. Could we see a new Ike Dike design in the future? Also, we might be one step closer to new state parks in our area and an alarming trend that's impacting Houston youth. Political contributor and Pulitzer Prize finalist Evan Mintz and writer and contributor Shiyam Galyon join me to break it all down. It's April 28th. I'm Raheel Ramzanali, and here's what Houston's talking about. Happy Friday, Evan, Shiyam. How are y'all? Evan, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Enjoying all of this rain.
Yep, absolutely. Hey, again, the plants are getting free water. We can't complain about that. Shiyam, how are you?
You know, we got a lot of rain in Sugar Land last night, and can only be grateful for that. I didn't have to water my plants this morning.
I love that. So let's jump right into it. We have a lot to talk about. As always, biggest story of the week, most overlooked story of the week, and of course, our moment of joy. We can leave with a little happy note here on CityCast Houston. Let's start it off ladies first. Shiyam, what was your biggest story of the week?
Oh, man. Okay, so the Environmental Protection Agency is going to start testing for toxic chemicals in the Fifth Ward this summer. And this week, residents in Fifth Ward, along with at-large council member Letitia Plummer, organized a summit on what they call the Cancer Cluster Summit. So residents, representatives, and experts in the medical field came together for a 2-day summit to discuss basically like contaminants in the soil and it's, public health and cancer and environmental health all together. The Environmental Protection Agency is going to be testing soil, groundwater, and air for different types of contaminants, including dioxins, creosote, PCP, and PAHs. I was like, what's a creosote? Creosote is it's like a mixture of like different oils used to treat wood that's like on the train tracks. So basically this all has to do with like the railroad that's going through Fifth Ward. Raheel, did you hear about this? Evan, did you hear about this?
I did, yeah.
I'm just going to say it's been an issue for a long time, and the reporting on the cancer clusters around it have been incredible. A lot of the industry claims that, the creosote, it doesn't spread, it just stays right there. But maybe if you have it in place when it rains, when it storms, year after year after year, things happen that you don't see in a laboratory setting.
That makes a lot of sense. And honestly, with the downpour that we saw this weekend, the soil in my garden got pushed around like under my car outside of the bed. So I'm really glad that there's going to be testing happening. I'm glad that representatives are on top of this. I'm glad that the EPA is on top of this. And I think it's going to take as much attention as possible to keep this on people's minds.
Yeah. And the biggest thing, after the testing, I hope there's accountability. I hope there's solutions as well to help out the residents and prevent this. Like, why is this happening still? And that's my biggest thing. Like, what is the accountability going to look like?
That's a good question. I'm going to keep following this. Evan, where have you said this reporting has been happening for years. Where do you see this reported on? Houston Public Matters has been my go-to for this kind of stuff.
Oh, the Houston Chronicle has had great reporting on it, too.
Cool. So we'll see what happens with that story. That's something that we'll be following along and hoping for the best and hoping for solutions as well for all the residents. Evan, what was your biggest story?
My biggest story this week was reporting by Jen Rice of the Houston Chronicle and Andrew Schneider at Houston Public Media on the 2022 elections. They've looked at the data, they've interviewed individuals, and they've been using this excellent reporting to debunk false and conspiratorial claims about the election. Now, some Republicans have been spreading this statistic that was first elevated by Channel 11 News, that 121 voting locations ran out of paper on Election Day in 2022. But when you look at the actual stats, you see that only 20 locations had signs of an actual paper shortage, and some only had gaps in voting for 15 minutes, some up to 3 hours. But there is still no evidence that any one person, let alone the tens of thousands of people necessary to change election results, were prevented from voting. And especially given you can vote at any one location anywhere in the county on Election Day. Now, this doesn't mean there weren't problems, and Houston Public Media's reporting has done a great job of showing how qualified people at the county level were fired, how trainings were poorly run, and how some places did run out of paper or were open late. But what's happening is that this false information about how bad things were is being used to push lawsuits to try to overturn the election and push legislation that will allow the state to take over local elections, get rid of Harris County's election administrator, create state election police who have the power to intervene and even make arrests, or even ban county-wide voting locations, the very thing that saved voters who might have had to wait for hours if their location ran out of paper. And the Dallas Morning News had an excellent editorial on this point just this week. But the sad reality is that our democracy is under attack, the weapon is lies, and our free press are rising to our defense.
So, Evan, what do you think happens with all of this reporting, with all of the actual facts now coming out? Will there be, again, accountability, or is this just going to be one of those things we always have to bring up? Like, actually, no, the facts are this. What happens here?
Well, I think the solid reporting we're seeing is doing a good job of focusing where the effort should go if you really want to address some of the problems that happened on Election Day, because it was a cluster. There was a problem. People should be held accountable. But overturning elections, that's preposterous. What you really want to see is the state legislature having hearings and dedicating resources so that the county will not have the gaps, so that they'll make sure that they have the people on hand and the resources on hand to run an election smoothly. But instead, what we're seeing is the state trying to come down and to punish people who shouldn't be punished, to go after policies that are actually helpful, and generally take any power away from Harris County.
Oh, man, this is going to be interesting to watch, especially in this election cycle.
Is this considered overreach? Is this like a pattern of overreach?
Oh, absolutely. This is total state overreach. The idea that the Texas Republican Party really believes in small government and local authority has been gone for years. The real hope is that the House will stand up for local authority, will block some of the worst bills that have already passed out of the Senate, and at least try to lay a standard so that you don't have freewheeling state-level authority to take over local elections.
You know, for me, the accountability aspect of all this is, yes, we can bring this up with lawmakers, we can bring this up in hearings, and we can correct everyone, but then nothing ever gets done and people still run with it. I guess it's going to take a massive lawsuit. I don't know. It just seems like nothing ever changes. When one piece of false information hits, it's now over. Like, you can never go back and turn people to the actual facts.
You know, I really think, and this doesn't necessarily make you feel good about it, but the county needs to step up and make sure that their elections are run incredibly smoothly, because the smallest error is going to be seized upon.
Yeah.
Like, there is no room for mistakes. Everyone is on you.
All right, my biggest story of the week. Okay, this is a personal story for me, right? I have a 7-month-old living in our house, and we're fortunate enough in our household where my wife and I can afford childcare, and we can send our daughter to daycare, and we've sent our oldest daughter to daycare as well, and we can find childcare. But so many Houstonians and so many Texans can't find that. And this week, more than 30 groups are now asking lawmakers on the state level to do something about this. There are 27% fewer programs operating in the state since 2020. There is a massive funding cut that's about to happen when federal pandemic relief funding expires next year. There's going to be a major hole in childcare, and for parents who are just trying to provide for their families and trying to make it, they can't put their kids in childcare at affordable rates. It's going to be a disaster, and I really hope something gets done here.
Raheel, I am absolutely there with you. As a parent of 2 kids, we're lucky that we have family in town who can help out with childcare. We're lucky that we have the resources to send our kids to preschool. But I know that there are millions of families out there who work day in, day out as hard as they can, and just childcare is so expensive. It's never enough.
I don't actually have kids, but I am incredibly pro-choice, whether it's you choosing not to have a family or you're choosing to have a family. And childcare is top, I would say, human rights issue in the United States. If you're pro-family, you have to be pro-childcare and making childcare affordable and accessible to everyone.
That's such a good point because a lot of people don't understand if you have two working parents or a single parent that is working a 9 to 5, where do you put that child, right? To be able to provide for your family. And then that's where that cycle of poverty sometimes starts is where you go, oh, where do I put my child? I can't put my child. I have to stay at home because I can't afford childcare. So what do I do now? And I know so many families where if a child, let's say, has an early dismissal at school, it turns into a whole thing with work because there's nowhere to put that child during the day. And I can't even imagine with a toddler, with a pre-K age child. It's just so much. And families need this relief. And I hope something gets done. All right. Your most overlooked story. Shiyam, what do you have for us?
So my most overlooked story is COVID-19. It is still going on. It's kind of confusing to talk about only because so many healthcare institutions, the data collection has stopped. So having a shared language about how to talk about it is not the same as it was during the early part of the pandemic. In fact, a lot of people, myself included with a question mark, talk about COVID in the past tense. And in the Houston Chronicle, there was an interview with Dr. Peter Hotez, who's the co-director of the Texas Children's Hospital Center for Vaccine Development and the dean of the National School of Tropical Medicine at Baylor College of Medicine. And they did an interview with him, and here's the top highlights. There's a new variant from India, the XBB.1.16. One of the new symptoms is an ocular itch, so you're itchy eyes. And the main points is that if you got the bivalent booster, if you've been boosted, all your boosters, it might be time you should get another booster. The healthcare community needs to figure out a vaccine booster schedule. And long term, it seems like there's a new coronavirus every so years, and we're probably going to get another new one around 2030. So long term is getting used to figuring out schedules around these things. But yeah, my most underlooked story is that we all need new vaccine shots.
Yeah, got to get your boosters up. And it's funny, I was bringing up my youngest daughter, and she's 7 months old. So she's in daycare, and there was a COVID outbreak in her class. So we took her to the pediatrician, and now everyone just follows the CDC guidelines. Look, she'll be fine. Don't worry about it. Quarantine. If she has symptoms, it's no big deal. Everyone's so relaxed about it now. And as a parent, you're actually, I'm very worried. This is a 7-month-old. So, the attitude on it has definitely changed. And there'll be new variants, and we'll have to just kind of be ready for it and counter it.
Man, everyone that I talk to, when I get people visiting from other parts of the country, that's kind of one of the first things that comes up is oh, you guys are still masking? Oh, we're not, as you can see, we're not really masking as much here. And I feel you on that, Raheel. And how's your daughter doing?
She's doing fine. Yeah, she's doing fine. Cool. A bunch of kids tested positive, and they're all doing fine too. It's, you almost have to trust the science, right? You go, all right, look, if a toddler does get it or an infant gets it, more than likely it won't impact them. Just keep an eye on them, make sure everything is good, and you just hope for the best. But for everyone in that little room, they're all good now.
That's good. I'm just sitting here waiting for scientists to perfect that nasal vaccine. You spray it up your nose so that the antibodies get up there where the virus apparently hangs out. And the problem that we've got is the shots we have now, at least this is what I've read, is that it can protect you. It doesn't necessarily prevent the spread. But if you can get up in the sinus cavities where the spread really starts, then that can really stop the spread of the virus and really crush the numbers in ways that we haven't seen yet.
Yeah, we'll see if that comes out pretty soon and what the future holds. Evan, how about you? What was your most overlooked story?
The most overlooked story for me this week was that the Ike Dike is in the news again.
All right.
Now, for those who don't know, the Ike Dike is a proposal for a massive system of dune barriers and a sea gate between Galveston and Bolivar to protect Galveston Bay and the Houston Ship Channel from a hurricane-driven storm surge. The worry is that a hurricane driving a wall of water right up that important trade avenue will smash into all of the petrochemical facilities we have, leading to a spill 10 times bigger than the Exxon Valdez and right in the middle of the Houston region. So what's going on right now? Well, the Houston Public Media's Katie Watkins has reported that the state budget is going to allocate about $500 million to the Gulf Coast Protection District, a state entity set up to help build the Ike Dike. And Congressman Randy Weber is asking for $100 million at the federal level. Now, that still leaves about $29 billion left for funding, but it's a start. But at the same time, Jake Biddle at Grist is reporting that the design that the Army Corps of Engineers is working on won't be robust enough to protect from the biggest storms. And that is absolutely a legitimate concern. Now, this week, I was talking to Bill Merrill, the Texas A&M professor behind the Ike Dike, and former Galveston Mayor Louis Rosen, who's a big Ike Dike fan, who have also pointed out that the current design the Army Corps is working with interferes with shipping traffic, which is the whole thing that the Ike Dike is set up to protect in the first place. It's good that it's moving forward. It's great that it's starting to get funding, but we need to get the design right. And I think that aspect of the story is going missed.
And Evan, what about the environmental studies that need to come with the Ike Dike, right? Because you are building on two separate sides. You've got so much silt and dirt and just building inside the water as well. What about the environmental studies? Have we already done those? Are we going to have to do those again with the new design?
Because the design is so massive, they're kind of doing environmental studies step by step rather than all at once, which means that you can move through it quicker, which is probably good, but also that you might be missing something. And there are a lot of big concerns. How would a gate adjust salinity levels in the bay? How would it prevent animals from migrating back and forth? How would the color of the sand affect the eggs of sea turtles that lay their eggs there? That's a concern. There's so many different things going on. But what I keep arguing is that the thing that the Ike Dike is set up to prevent is the biggest petrochemical oil spill we have ever seen, the biggest environmental disaster that we have ever seen. So all of this is aimed at an environmental goal, but we have to make sure that the solution isn't worse than the problem.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. My most overlooked story, and I want to bring this up. We've all seen it. They're everywhere, no matter where you look. Everyone's vaping and everyone's using e-cigarettes, right? Well, Help Advisor analyzed CDC data recorded for the last 5 years. And guess what? Right here in Houston and in Texas, we are really bad, not only using it, but also amongst a very important group, 18 to 24-year-olds. Guess what? The vaping rates amongst this age group increased by 155%. From 2015 to 2021, and only 6 states showed a higher rate of increase. Alaska was number one, Arizona, North Carolina, Tennessee, South Carolina, and Kentucky. So there's a lot going on here. The rates are extremely high, and we haven't even looked at the last 2 years. This data was until 2021, but I think this also just matches everything we see. There are a lot of kids vaping and using e-cigarettes, and we know about the studies. It's not good for them. And here's hoping that somehow, some way, this trend goes down. Shiyam, let's get your moment of joy, please.
Well, my moment of joy is happening later today at Basket Books. The Radius of Arab American Writers is hosting a poetry reading, and I'm actually going to be one of the people reading. I do write poetry, but in private, but they're letting me read this creative piece that I had published. And I'm really excited to meet folks who are writers and love to read poetry and prose. And I'm just super excited. This is my first time at Basket Books.
Awesome. That's so cool. Good luck today.
Thanks.
That's so much fun. Evan, how about you? What's your moment of joy?
So the moment of joy was me reading a story in the Dallas Morning News this week about Doug Deason and Luke Metzger teaming up to expand state parks in Texas. Now, for those who don't know, Deason is a pro-Trump conservative activist and billionaire with some idiosyncratic policy positions. He's a big advocate for criminal justice reform, and he's also a big advocate for expanding state parks. And Luke Metzger has been a long-time environmental activist in the state. Now, they are convincing the legislature to dedicate $1 billion of the budget to a new fund to help buy up land for future parks. And the real hope is that that $1 billion will be able to attract around $5 billion in private and federal dollars, enough to buy the 1.4 million acres that the state has estimated they need to meet demand, because people love going to state parks. And if you look at a map of Texas, you might wonder, we've got a lot of land here, but we don't have a lot of national parks. We've got Big Bend, but if you look at Colorado or New Mexico or Arizona or other places throughout the Southwest, like, you have all these incredible parks. Why not Texas? Well, that question was answered in this month's edition of Texas Monthly, where Rose Callahan explained that when Texas was becoming a state, we had a ton of debt. And so we had asked the federal government to forgive our debts that Texas had racked up as an independent country in exchange for maybe taking on a bunch of our lands. It'd be a nice exchange. But Congress said no. So Texas was forced to sell all of those publicly held lands to pay our debts. And here we are today with not a lot of parks. So I'm really looking forward to this team up. I'm really looking forward to getting new parks, hopefully maybe in the Katy Prairie, maybe something uniting all of those hill country parks into one big park, maybe more of our coast, but just a place where you can go and enjoy Texas without it being turned into a strip mall or freeway or anything else.
I like that. I'm all about state parks. I'm all about national parks. The more parks, the better. And I love that. I love that. So my moment of joy, my grandfather, who lives in Pakistan, is coming here to Houston for the first time in almost 15 years. So I get a chance to hang out with him, and he's actually been in the States now for about 3 weeks, but he's finally making his way down to Houston to see his daughter, who's my mom, Ruby. So I'm going to get to hang out with him, and he's going to get a chance to meet his great grandkids. He's met my oldest daughter, but he gets a chance to meet my youngest one as well. So I can't wait, and this is going to be a good moment of joy for me.
Oh, that sounds really sweet.
That's so awesome.
So where are you taking him?
Oh, he's been going everywhere already. So I'm going to be taking him all around Houston, wherever he wants to go. He's close to 100 years old now. So
whoa.
Yeah, and he's still walking around, still living life. So, I count my blessings that I get to spend some time with him.
That's wonderful. I hope you guys have a great time together.
Thank you so much. And thank you both for joining us today. It was a lot of fun. We learned a lot, and we talked about the biggest stories, the most overlooked, and of course, our moments of joy. So thank you, Evan. Thank you, Shiyam. And we'll talk to you here in a couple of weeks.
Sounds great. See you guys.
Talk to you later.
That was Evan Mintz and Shiyam Galyon. You can follow them on Twitter with the links in our show notes. Do you want more news and events in your inbox every morning? Subscribe to our newsletter, Hey Houston, at houston.citycast.fm. That's all for this week on CityCast Houston. Our lead producer is Dina Kespa. Our producer is Carleon Jones. And our newsletter editor is Brooke Lewis. And the host is me, Raheel Ramznali. We also had help this week from producer Elizabeth Kama and technical director Noah Snyderman. Our music is by the band All the Kimonos. We'll be back on Monday with a look at why so many bike sharing stations are closing. Thank you for listening, and I hope you learned something new.
Yeah, y'all are so much fun. Thank you so much. Raheel, I love how you host the space. And Evan, you totally earn those nerd glasses that you wear. And you and I are due for
I need them to see.
Oh, yeah? Oh, they're not just aesthetic? Okay.
No, like I'm blind without these.